How the Twitter world leaves bad start, but I don't feel like hitting restart. How the Twitter world leaves no doubt. Some more thoughts on Sloan. Is Gasol really available, and for what? From somebody else's podcast. A little thought on Kobe. Are the Sixers the Jazz model? And a few other notes for you coming up on today's edition of Tip Off. Boom, 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 boom. Carlos Boozer got a vote for all defensive team. Boom, 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 boom. Carlos Boozer got a vote for the all defensive team. Boom, 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 boom. Somebody voted for Carlos Boozer for the all defensive team. Boom, 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 boom. How are you? I hope you enjoyed the first day of 1280 The Zone, the sports leader. I know the guys are working hard. Hopefully that's going well for them. Hopefully you still find time for this podcast, despite the full level programming that they give you. A lot of choices for you out there in the Utah sports world. I like them all. We're going to do something a little differently for you. For those of you on YouTube, you kind of get screwed today. I could flash you or do something right now that would be even worse and make you turn it off. But I'm going to do a few things here. And then yesterday on Doug Gottlieb's NBA Today podcast, he got a text from an NBA executive with all of the possible trade possibilities for Pau Gasol. And I'm going to play that soundbite. I can't play it into YouTube. I don't think I can play it into YouTube in a way in which you can hear it. And so at some point here, I'm just going to make a mark, and you'll know if you want to go to the audio version. You'll just have to fast forward or just deal with the fact that you're going off. You didn't hear that. Okay? So that's how you do it. Look at this! Look at this! Do you know what that is? That says Kentucky versus Kansas. Do you know what these are? All of these are college. Let's see, this one says Norfolk State versus Florida. These are all unwatchable events of collegiate sports, except for the fact that they involve college draftee prospects, and the draft videos will start again soon. I'd like to finish the Gordon Hayward season in review, then work on some of these. I'm going out of town for a while, but I may work on some of these while I'm out of town just to see how patient my wife and kids really are. So anyway, those are hopefully starting. I know we don't have a draft pick right now, but we shall see. All right, I've had two Twitter experiences that I wanted to share. One, I got a tweet. Could we trade Raja Bell for Jimmer Fredette? And to me, it was like the ultimate. And the great thing about Twitter, like Facebook, you actually know if someone's 11. For all I know, this kid is 12. So I have no idea. But and then my favorite part is I retweeted it because I was fully trolling. Let's not deny anything here. I was fully trolling. And I got people who thought I was serious. Yeah, that'd be great. I think we'd have to give more to Sacramento, though. Holy smokes. Let's clarify two things here. One, Raj's trade value is 0. I'm not sure he's in the league next year. Two, the worst thing we could do to Jimmer is bring him back to Utah. He had a tough enough time in Sacramento. Let's let him get his feet settled and have an NBA career. It doesn't need to be here. It's like Gordon Hayward talks about all the time. Being out of Indiana is the best thing that ever happened to him. Same thing for Jimmer. Not to mention the fact that Jimmer didn't have much of a year to make you believe that, he's got a huge upside future. But let's not, I personally, regardless of who it is, 4-year college players don't develop a great deal. What they do their first year is generally what they do in their career, with slight upticks, but not the 10 to 15% uptick you get out of young players. A much slower level of uptick. So, right setting, Jimmer's going to have a good place for him. Right now, being in Utah would be the worst thing that could happen for Jimmer. I was totally trolling, and then and then my favorite others, I sent out a tweet today about Kobe. And the Kobe tweet was that Kobe, on all shots over 15 feet over Oklahoma City, shot 29%, which prompted, again, I don't know who WVC_Coog is. I know he's a BYU fan. And again, the guy, he's probably a really good guy. And I don't know, maybe he's trolling back at me on this one. So that's the great thing. And I've dealt with this guy a few times. He's usually pretty good, and he's a very loyal listener. So I actually just wish I didn't mention who it was. But he then tweets back to me. So in other words, Alec Burks is better than Kobe Bryant. What? I don't think he really meant it. But I love the funny thing on Twitter. You just don't know who just said that to you. in any way at all. And that's what I think makes this kind of a crazy thing. And I react too. I gotta stop. Like the guy that this is all going to be about Twitter. See, I'm the, there's a guy today who tweets to me at Locked On Sports. Must be nice having a job working for the biggest jerk in Utah, Greg in Utah, while Jan and Gunther are unemployed. Lame. Like, well, how do I actually direct message? Like, why'd you bring me into this? Like, okay, Jan and Kyle work really hard and build a following, and there evidently was a decision. There was no spot for him, and that sucks. It sucks for my buddy Ben too. I'm glad didn't have to be in that. I might have ended up without a job also. I think those lineups are pretty good. I'm not sure where I would have fit in. So, but why do I have to get brought into this? Like, why am I on the other one is I do something that someone hates, and I love that they just at Greg in Utah, Alex. So I'm like, okay, so you're going to my owner and my job and my kids and my wife because of like this most minuscule thing. Really? You're really doing that? Oh, I can't believe it. There's great stuff online right now. I think there's been my biggest problem with the NBA lockout and the truncated schedules. I couldn't read this year. I just didn't have time to prep a game and have the stuff online for you guys and go read great stuff. There is great stuff online right now. There have been some really interesting pieces. There was one done about how much players run in a game, and it came out that a player runs somewhere in the line of about 2.5 miles per game. What I thought was also interesting is that the guys who ran the furthest in the players who were tracked were Lou Dang and Rudy Gay, and they each ran about 2.7 or 2.6. Not this was just of the players tracked. Kevin Love ran about 2.6, and Brandon Jennings, a point guard, ran 2.5 miles. So it's in that range. That's important for Jazz fans because if you're going to move Paul Millsap to the 3, and people kind of laughed at me. His free throw percentage dove the minute he started playing the 3. He's running a lot more. It's a very different position in what you're asking a guy to do, how much energy they're using, how they're running around the floor, all of those kind of things. If someone had the time, that's probably me. The research that probably should be done is what did Paul shoot in his minutes as a small forward this year. According to 82games.com, which charts some of it, they have him as spending 5% of his minutes as a small forward. They had him shooting 51% from the field as a small forward, rebounding pretty well, turning the ball over a little bit. And having him defending the small forwards brilliantly. I don't always know what all of their metrics are and what some of their stuff means, and how they probably. But if they define that, it's interesting. If he shot 51% effective field goal percentage, that's a good sign because I would have thought that over time Paul's shooting numbers would drop the more he played the small forward. So. We'll keep it. It's just a worthwhile note on that. So there's just some great stuff. The guy at HickoryHigh.com does incredible work, and he did. I'm going to steal this from him, credit him, but steal it, put it up on Locked On Jazz. He did this incredible graph on possession usage of the Jazz and where they're most effective and how we use it. And it's interesting that what comes out of this is we're clearly most effective when you get guys on the move. Favors, Jefferson, and Millsap off cuts, and maybe even then Hayward and Harris off spot-ups. But we run Jefferson post-ups the most, and the question has to be asked of whether those post-ups actually lead us to those cuts. And that's something that you'd have to study a lot more film than just doing data. But it's some great work on that. This is almost like the old shot clock because I just have a bunch of little things I want to throw out there, and then we'll get to that soundbite from Doug Gottlieb. My take on Jerry Sloan is he's really, really bright. He's one of the most street-smart people out there. And his open comments about Orlando and Charlotte and interest in those jobs means to me he wants Portland. That he was trying to send a message to Portland that he wants that job. What I don't know is who goes with him as the general manager. Portland's got to hire a general manager there, and how much impact that could actually have, and whether it would trickle through our organization at all. Jerry's incredibly loyal, and I'd hate to see any of our front office people go. I think this organization's very, very well run. As I mentioned in that tweet, Kobe, 19 of 59 from outside 16 feet in the playoffs against the Oklahoma City. And if you look at Kobe over the last 2 years, he has taken about a shot and a half less a game at the rim and 2 shots more a game from 2 to 3 shots more from 16 feet and out. He probably takes the most shots of any player in the NBA from 16 feet and out now. He averages taking about 12 and a half shots a game from 16 feet and above. That's a lot, and he has become an exclusively perimeter player. Are the Sixers the Jazz model? Look at the Sixers for a second. They have Holiday, Lou Williams, Spencer Hawes, Evan Turner, all young players. Turner's a high draft pick. Holiday's kind of a mid. Hawes is a mid. They acquired him, Lou Williams. And then they have Iguodala, who's a non-star, but I think he's a star because of his defensive prowess, who's in there. And I don't know if we have that comparable guy. And then they have Elton Brand as kind of the veteran stalwarts with the young guys developing while competing. Last year they lost in the first round in 5 games to Miami. This year they were going to play a Game 7 against Boston. Those are pretty big moments. They're following a pretty similar model to what the Jazz have done in a lot of ways. Finally, Boston, we talked about after Game 1. They were 7 of 18, I think, from 16 to 23 feet, and they won that game. And I said, you know what, I think Sixers would be fine if they bank on that. And that's what's happened this series. In Game 2, they lost. They shot 33% from 16 to 23 feet. In Game 4, they shot about 36%. And they lost that game last night. They were 10 of 33 from 16 to 23 feet and lost that game. When they've won, they've hit the 16 to 23 footer. They were 7 of 18, which isn't great in Game 1. They were just about 50%, 9 of 20 in Game 2. They were 7 of 16 in Game 5. These are close games for the most part. It's a minor thing. It's 1 or 2 shots from 16 to 23 feet that are here. But the Philadelphia played the numbers, forced that shot, and in turn have forced themselves into a Game 7. One of the other great notes that is out there floating around was the difference in shooting between players that has come out recently on players who, if they have to dribble, that they significantly shoot less well if they take one dribble with the basketball than just being a spot-up shooter. And I think you got to think about that offensively. Another incredible note, a lot of this was out of ESPN, had it on their playbook site, out of this new Sports VU, which is all the cameras, that Paul Pierce's teammates shoot a higher percentage after his passes than any other player in the NBA. So some really interesting stuff. All right, here's what we're going to do on the YouTube version. We're just going to continue. On the audio version, you're going to get a soundbite right now from Doug Gottlieb that lists the possibilities of who Gasol could be traded for. He cuts off after the Knicks. It's as though Utah doesn't exist. We're U in the alphabet, and so therefore we didn't exist. So here is that run from Doug Gottlieb. Okay, so he talks about Houston. And I think that's the likely scenario if he's going to get traded. But I wonder, if you look at it from a Jazz standpoint, if they put Kevin Martin and Luis Scola in a package together, or if they're able to put Kyle Lowry and Luis Scola in a package, that may be better than anything that the Jazz can put together. There's some argument, though, that what LA may want to do is just exercise the option on Bynum or commit to Bynum long term. Though with Kobe's $30 million salary, they're going to have a hard time creating cap space. If they just get the option on Bynum and then get expiring contracts for Gasol, high-level expiring contracts for Gasol, they then can actually play a free agent market for a little bit. Atlanta, Josh Smith, that would just have to be a basketball trade. If they thought that Gottlieb mentioned, Boozer will let go. Indiana's interesting. I do believe that Gasol's a player who, if he goes to a new spot, he's going to elevate that team. He takes a good team and makes them great. I talked about that with Travis Rogers on Yahoo Sports Radio. I think that you take that and Hibbert, but giving up Hibbert, but he's a free agent they've got to sign. And moreover on that, I don't think Hibbert works back to LA. That would have to be a three-way. The Memphis Zach Randolph doesn't work. It's another post player. It's the same way Al Jefferson doesn't really work. If we're trying to move Al for Gasol, Al and Cantor, or Al and Burks, if you're willing to do that, or Al and whomever you're going to try to do, I'm not sure. Al and Millsap, somebody mentioned. I'm not sure that those really work for them because of Bynum's presence. Would Millsap and Cantor might actually work better. For Gasol, I'm not sure the numbers work on that, though. I think the Jazz would end up short. You have to get, with Gasol's contract, you have to get within, I believe it's 20% now, or $5 million if it's under $10 million. $10 million, it's just $5 million. It's pretty easy to make those trades. But when you get into the bigger numbers, you would have to. Gasol's number next year is 18. So the Jazz would have to, if they actually might be able to get that done because you throw Raj in the backside of that deal just to make the numbers work. That's exactly why the Jazz have not released Raja Bell right there. So would Millsap and Cantor, with Millsap's expiring contract for Gasol, I don't think that's enough. But you start running down this list, is that Jennings and Gooden's not a good deal to me. Kevin Love, I don't think Minnesota would do it. New Jersey's Wallace and Lopez. You have to have the best deal. You have to get a deal better than what Houston could offer. If Houston's willing to do Lowry and Scola or Martin and Scola, you'd have to do a better deal than you have to feel as though you're offering a better deal than Josh Smith from Atlanta. And do the Jazz have the capability of doing that? I think gets to be somewhat of a I don't know. I mean, piece it together yourself. I don't think Indiana would be willing to move Hibbert and West, though and I don't think LA would take that back. It's got a match for LA also. So, you suddenly run down the list that Gottlieb talked about. I agree with him. I think the Knicks are ridiculous with Stoudemire. I think the likelihood is Darren Williams for Pau Gasol in a sign and trade that suddenly puts Wallace, Gasol, and Lopez together. New Jersey tries to fill the gaps with other players there. But I think that's the most likely, is that Darren ends up with the Lakers on a sign and trade for Gasol. And the Lakers then, with Darren and Kobe and Bynum, have a much better mix of players than they had previously. But if you look down that list from a Jazz standpoint, can you put together a deal better than, I would say Houston's is the best on the table. I think you have to look at that Josh Smith. I don't think that Boozer deal is worth it. Indiana and Hibbert, I don't think is possible. Zach, I don't think really matches Minnesota, unless they really like Brandon Jennings. I don't. He's a 40% shooter. And Minnesota would love it. I don't think they'll do it. If they're going to move Gasol and they really try, and really I guess at this point, if they're trying to move some money, maybe the Jazz do have a package that can be put together, or at least get in that discussion. But the problem is always you have to have the best deal. You have to have the deal that's better than any other deal anybody else has to offer. All right, that's tip-off. Hope you're good. We might do a little bit more of that kind of shot clock version. We just jam it in it there with a bunch of different notes as the big stories kind of start to dissipate. Have a good one.